My railway journeys around Britain in search of song have taken me everywhere from Beachy Head to Whitby. This week, on the trail of cathedral music, I've come to York. Sadly, not by any of these. This is the stunning National Railway Museum. It copes with 500,000 visitors every year. In the middle of the city, York Minster has over 1 million visitors. But I wonder, is that too just a museum? And is the music that fills its lofty transepts nothing more than ancient tradition? The Cathedral. It takes its name from the Latin for a bishop's throne, cathedra. You had a bishop, he needed a throne, like this one. It needed to be housed somewhere dry. The cathedrals are the most costly, the most impressive, and the most beautiful throne rooms ever built. But what of cathedrals today? They seem to me to fulfill several needs. They're places of pilgrimage, the setting for state celebrations, places of solace and thanksgiving, and undoubtedly tourist attractions. But they're also places of continuity in Christian worship. The tradition of choral evensong, for instance. It may have fizzled out in parish churches due to lack of support, but it's continued in British cathedrals for centuries. Your distant ancestor Anthony Trollope wrote the Barchester Chronicles, centred around a cathedral. You've written a novel, The Quiet, centred around a cathedral. Is cathedral life in your bones, Joanna?
It might be, and I wouldn't be conscious of it. I think I chose it for the same reason that he chose it, is that it's a little world you can drop a bell jar over and watch everybody scurrying about underneath.
What's special about the cathedral tradition in Britain, and is it peculiar to Britain?
It seems to be stronger here, especially the choral tradition, I think. I think ours are some of the last cathedrals left in the West with choirs in them, with singing boys.
Why is that? Why have we retained it and everybody else has lost it or never had it?
I have to tell you that we're better at it than anybody else, I think. The tradition here is extraordinary. There's an average of 7 sung offices in all English cathedrals during the week.
Now, why on earth do you sing evensong 6 times a week when it's notorious as being a service, evensong generally, that people just don't go to?
Well, it's not entirely true to say that they don't come to evensong here. You'd be surprised. You come on some pretty dull Tuesday in February, and there's some people here, quite a few people here, even then, though that's not the point. The point is that it's being sung up to this tip-top standard, even right at the bottom of the season. But it's all for the glory of God. We're putting in an enormous amount of effort and resources, and it's so that our worship will be something a little bit more approaching what is fit for God, who's unspeakable.
So if nobody came and sat and watched, or a man and his dog, if the dog were allowed in, you would still do it?
Absolutely. Don't you say sat and watched. It's not like that at all. No, this is going up, and this is worship that's happening. And whether there are people here or not is secondary, provided we're doing our stuff. And when I say we, I suppose an important thing is to say that, because I have to rebuke the musicians occasionally about this, they say there's no evensong tonight. It's not true. There isn't sung evensong, but there's evensong that's said by us. We're a college of priests, and so it's happening all the time.
A bit like running a theatre running this place. I mean, what's the size of your cast? How many people have you got involved?
We have almost about 190, I think, full-time staff, and then of course we have our volunteers, and we have about, I think, about 700 or 800 of those at the moment, and we just couldn't operate without the volunteers. They're absolutely marvellous, they really are.
Isn't there a danger with a place like this, which is so huge that it becomes a museum almost, and you stop treating it like a church?
Oh no, well I suppose it could be, but it is very much a living building, as I like to call it. And I remember the dean had a visiting dean. I think he came from Australia, and he said, you know, this is the most user-friendly cathedral that I've ever visited. And the dean said to me, I don't know whether that's a compliment, Dorothy, but we'll take it as one. But we do try to present not this sort of stuffy image. All right, it's an awesome building when you come inside, but I like to think that when people come in, they will find this lovely special atmosphere, and that they will sort of warm to the place, kind of a sort of an Irish expression, and go away uplifted.
What was the reaction of the man, the woman in the street when the fire raged through?
Oh, absolute devastation. Yes, absolutely devastated. Here was York Minster, the pride of Yorkshire. What's happened to it? It really was tragic.
Now you know what happened.
Exactly, yes.
Do you get women wanting to mother you all the time?
Well, when we went to America, we had sort of nurse that came along, nursed along. She was very nice.
You see, I reckon you just fool all these women, don't you, by looking terribly innocent and pure, and you're not really at all.
No.
But it's a good sing.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I enjoy it very much.
Edward, what made you want to sing? When did you suddenly decide?
I decided when I was very young, actually.
How old? Very young.
Well, I liked singing when I was 3 and 4, and
That's very young.
went to music groups, and then it just went on from that.
And Sam, when do you really feel that this is what you've always wanted to do?
I think when we're singing concerts, mainly on tour,
Yeah.
when we're singing concerts.
strange name, Camera Cantorum. What does it mean?
Very roughly, a room in which to sing. And it's a term that I've not come across before until I came to York.
So it's peculiar to hear.
Yes.
Now, your relationship with the lads, I noticed you're calling them gentlemen, which sounds terribly grown up. It seems that you have a very good relationship, with a good rapport with them.
Well, that is essential if you're going to get them to sing and to enjoy what they're doing. And I think one of the things about cathedral choirs is that they are treated, or you try to treat them as professional musicians, because what they are doing is a professional musical job. That's putting it at its lowest. You don't judge them as children. If they were writing an essay or doing a handwriting competition, you'd say that's jolly good considering they are children. And at its lowest, if they do well, you say that is good, full stop, when it comes to a cathedral choir.
You see, it does seem to me that there's a danger inherent in cathedral worship, in that the choir is central to it. The congregation is almost peripheral, spectating at it. Is that the case?
If that were the case, I don't think we would get as many people coming to the services as we do. I think people do very readily take part in the service, even though they're not making any noise. In the same way that, for instance, that when you go to the theatre, you enter into the play, even though you're not actually taking part in it.
Isn't some of the music a bit elitist?
I've had too many experiences that show me that it is not, and that it can speak to the uninitiated in a way that nothing else can. I once knew somebody who knew nothing about the church, nothing about classical music at all, and he once heard a Lassus Mass, and he was profoundly moved by it. And when I say he was profoundly moved, I think what he suddenly realized in listening to that Mass was that there is a spiritual dimension to life.
Here in Wells Cathedral, in the south choir aisle, is the tomb of a man to whom all choir boys should be grateful. This is the tomb of Bishop Thomas Beckington. Now, not only did he design his own tomb, but he also drew up a set of rules and regulations in the 15th century to regulate the lives of all choristers.
In 1459, written down in the Dean's memorandum book a little bit later, and they tell us about the choir boys attending services, coming into the cathedral in a seemly manner. They're not to run. They still mustn't run. They still walk in a seemly manner. They're to wear the regulation surplices down to the feet and not to wear any improper clothes, any fashionable clothes. They attend the chorister's school, and we've got very detailed regulations for school life. You think of Dickens and how, well, unkind they were to school children in Victorian times. Beckington had different ideas. He said if your chorister was not very bright, because after all you had him for his voice, not for his brains, there was no point in trying to beat information into his head. You must give him short, interesting lessons. You must repeat them very often so he can memorize them. He must have a friend who is brighter than he is, who will help him with his homework.
Remarkably humane. You expect something much harder with the rod brought to bear at frequent intervals.
Not here. They're to have playtime. They're to have more playtime in summer than in winter. And on feast days they can have extra playtime before and after supper.
How often would they sing during the day? I mean, what time would they rise, for instance?
Very early indeed, sometimes during night. Some of the night services, especially for important feasts, they'd be up at midnight or just after. They would start at dawn or before probably, and there would be at least 8 services a day the boys would be involved in on ordinary days. More on feast days, more if they had to sing in the special chapels, and there are only 6 choristers. We must remember that. It's not a big choir, it's a much smaller choir than now. There's only 6 little choir boys, and another 6 who are ex-choristers who do odd jobs as their voices break and help out.
If you've got a really good chorister, was there a danger that he could be poached?
It's a danger, it certainly happened, yes. And the arch-poacher that we know about was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I. She would hear of good choir boys, and she'd take them for her Chapel Royal, the best boy singers in the country.
The Chapel Royal were a peripatetic bunch. Where the monarch went, they went. And that meant performing at places like this. Hampton Court, on the banks of the River Thames. If choristers couldn't be encouraged to join the chapel by fair means, then the powers that be were not averse to using foul. They'd send out talent scouts who would spot the best voices, slap a royal warrant on them, and virtually press gang them into joining the chapel. But it wasn't a bad life. You had a spectacular uniform, good job prospects, travel, everything it seems except luncheon vouchers. But there were disadvantages. You were expected to act as a whipping boy for the royal princes. If they committed misdemeanours, you took the blame and the punishment. As well as having the best voices, the Chapel Royal also employed the best composers. People like Henry Purcell, and the man who composed this, Thomas Tallis. The boys have the glamorous front row position in the choir stalls, but what of the men in the back row? Here at York, they're called songmen. It amazes me that, I mean, what do you do for a living? Because I've been doing a bit of homework around here. You get, what, about £4,000 per annum?
Just over, yeah.
For being a lay clerk. How can you live on that? You have to be there as often as the choir boys are?
Yes, every day except Wednesday.
So what do you do to earn a living?
You can't earn a living as a songman, so you have to, if you don't want to be a teacher, which is becoming more difficult nowadays, then you have to make do, bits and pieces. Russell runs a bed and breakfast, Richard teaches. I do what I can, perform a bit of teaching here and there. You just have to do it.
I think this is where, in fact, we are facing difficult times, because there are fewer and fewer people willing to do this sort of work, or able to do this sort of work, because of the awkward time that we're required to be in the Minster. 4:15 every day is not a felicitous time to be thinking about being there. So it's getting quite difficult to maintain this sort of tradition.
Do you see this sort of tradition in Russell dying out? I mean, can you see the end of this coming? Because people are not being paid enough and a lot is expected of them.
I think as a full-time occupation, then I think that could be so. I can foresee perhaps in 10, 20 years, the time when we perhaps just have a cathedral choir singing at weekends or something along those lines, certainly. As I was saying, I think the transition from parish church musician to cathedral lay clerk is so great now that the numbers, as Richard was saying, are just not coming forward. And unless the Oxbridge choral scholars are coming through into the provinces, we have very little to choose from.
What for you are the greatest moments? I mean, if you can put your finger on when you know why you do this job, when is it?
In the depths of January, 6 inches of snow, nobody in the congregation, the atmosphere is electric.
Is there a place for modern music at Wells?
Oh, yes, very much so. We have modern anthems sung, commissioned, for instance, for the re-hallowing of the chapter house last year, a competition for the re-hallowing of the choir this year. We've had over 50 entries, not to mention people on the spot. The head chorister of this year has written an anthem, written the words as well as the music, The God of Love.
What made you want to compose the anthem?
Well, first of all, sadly, my grandfather died, and I had a bit of... I wanted to compose a piece, and then quite shortly after that, my other grandfather died, which gave me more confidence to write a piece about a battle between good and evil.
It was amazing at tonight's service. I mean, when you think there were, 30, 40 people in this huge cathedral in the congregation, a large choir giving voice to the most amazing music, incredibly uplifting.
Oh, it is. It is. I don't think that anything could ever replace it. That's why it's so important we keep it, because it has this quality of being tremendously passionate. It's a way of articulating spirituality without words, which sometimes is a bit difficult in terms of faith. But it's enormously passionate, but it's also platonic. It's got sort of no gender, and that is what makes it sort of pure for all of us, I think.
may say to yourself, what on earth has a steam engine got to do with cathedrals? Well, they've got more in common than you'd think. For a start, they're both iniquitously expensive to maintain. They're also both huge and very theatrical. But there's more to both of them than mere show. For some people, cathedrals provide a deep spiritual peace that simply can't be found elsewhere. Cathedrals are breeding grounds for talent. Think of the musicians who started their lives as choristers. Sir Arthur Sullivan, Sir Charles Groves, and young Michael with his magnificent anthem. And if you ever wonder just how important cathedrals are to you, remember how you felt when York Minster caught fire, and reflect on the speed and the care of its restoration. Next week, the great crescendo as I seek out the massed choirs of choral societies in the grand finale of this series of Titchmarsh on Song.